You're tuned in to the MtG Cable cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seatbelts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cable cast. Starring Reptar and Thirsty, them onion head motherfuckers.
Alrighty, guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal cast. And before we get started, a little bit of bookkeeping. Obviously, we said a couple weeks ago that our format was going to be changing for things. We have pushed that live. So check us out on our socials, which you will get at the end of the episode. And this is part 1 of 2 for our annual year-end classic, If We Ran Hasbro.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. And with that, let's take it away because we've each picked 3 things we would change, keep the same, improve, whatever.
Yep.
And that's what we have time for. So let's take it away for topics 1 and 2 for each of us.
There you go. So this year is actually kind of difficult for me overall with the completion of a lot of the sales and kind of the restructuring of the entertainment and like movie division. There wasn't a lot for me to rail on in that regard. There's the new Transformers animated movie that I didn't see, but I heard people really enjoyed. And typically speaking,
It was good.
Yeah, animated Transformers do well, regardless of what format it is. So it's hard to kind of poo-poo on that. And then all the other optional brands that we don't engage with also seem to do, pretty well. Like, can you really say anything bad about Mr. Potato Head? Whatever. So
One of the best characters, if not the best, in Toy Story.
100% agree. Rex is also top tier in those movies.
Oh, yeah, Rex is great, yeah.
And sometimes they put Mr. Potato Head in the Spider-Man costume, so it's just like, you gotta lean in. And It took me a little while to figure this out, because we do this every year, and so I've been thinking about it for a couple of weeks, and at the end of the day, I just came up with stuff really circling around Magic and less around Hasbro, because we did talk about so much in regards to digital and their handling of Baulders Gate 3, what's coming out of that, etc. And we can only beat that horse so many times. But I think one of the items tantamount to the success of Wizards of the Coast and eventually Hasbro is going to be, honestly, learning how to handle the secret layers. So we talked a lot about them in last week's episode. And one of the important things that they need to start doing is leaning into secret layers as a way to reskin the game. When you have like skins in other games, typically MOBAs, every character gets skins, but not every skin is popular. That's not a problem. People have different tastes. It makes sense.
Yep.
There's also a limited number of characters to skin, so asset generation is both pretty clear and pretty concise. Mm-hmm. Magic has thousands of cards to choose from, and players look at them all when they are building their commander decks. The format that espouses personal flair and player identity really makes it difficult to choose some of the best cards. So the task to identify cards to reskin can be Herculean, especially because it's extremely difficult to skin a physical asset multiple ways every few months. Like, there was a 2 or 3 year string where we got a different Soul Ring. It felt like every 6 months. But one of these issues can actually be solved.
Yep.
EDHREC provides excellent data as to what the, quote, majority, unquote, of players are utilizing, and that can help guide the efforts of identifying meaningful cards to reskin. Why are we out here reskinning Price of Glory and other nonsense red cards when there's an entire fleet of ramp spells that you could have done a treatment for? Not multiples, just one. Why are we reskinning cards tangentially related to a werewolf commander deck that still doesn't have enough support to really exist? These aren't big swings that need to be taken, and you don't need to reskin, again, Soul Ring or Arcane Signet, Swords to Plowshares all the time, but you could choose many more meaningful cards to be reskinning in secret layers.
Yeah, it's really strange to me because it seems like, from my recollection, outside of the ridiculous uproar over, well, ridiculous, it was justified, of new cards being exclusive to secret layers. That was obviously not great. Walking Dead secret layer was one of the best ones.
Yes.
That to me was like the most perfect secret layer because it perfectly encapsulated what I thought secret layers should be for, except for having new cards in them that are exclusive to that secret layer. And yeah, I think that's very much, this is something that was successful for us, that we didn't necessarily have to like pick absolute gas for cards. People were just happy to have these Walking Dead cards.
Yeah.
And you know, the League of Legends one was another one. I played the 4-mana Archaeomancers. Like, that was my pauper Archaeomancer forever. And that was a way of bringing in this big IP and trying to get people interested. And that to me was what they should have been.
Fortnite had another good one. There was the loot pinata and the party bus. Like, those were good options too. And we're this comment I made is only looking at Commander. They did the spell books, and we're still not even done with them. We might be done with them. I don't know. I honestly don't know if we've done all 5. But that was an attempt at reskinning competitive level cards, but they still did not take good swings at this.
No.
I'm pretty sure in the Gideon one, they reskinned Worship. A card that was at best a one-of sideboard option in a deck.
Yeah.
Instead, they could be focusing on the Jund starter kit. And you reskin Lightning Bolt as a common, Fatal Push as an uncommon, and Thoughtseize as a rare.
Yep.
Maybe you put a Mythic in there. You do 4 cards. You buy 4 sets. You turn it into an LCG for an entire deck. Or a suite of cards. Xerox spells in Modern. Sleight of Hand, Opt, Consider, Preordain. Right? Why not? Why aren't we doing this? Why are we picking some of the worst options for cards? I don't get that. Like, everything in both Ghostbusters, Secret Layers, the Chucky one, these were all abysmal card choices. Just as a for instance, because that's what comes to top of mind, because I honestly don't pay enough attention to these secret layers after I see here's a bunch of shit, and then I just move on with my day.
Yep.
Like, that's it.
Especially for the ones that don't necessarily have, like, I mean, I'm a sucker for Frank Frazetta and his stuff. Like, that was awesome. That was an insane secret layer. But some of the IPs that are going after, like Chucky, Ghostbusters, like, I don't know if maybe the Ghostbusters, because I grew up on that. I love those. But I really don't know how much crossover you're getting with that. They're not IPs that, like, there's nobody out here fucking Googling Chucky memorabilia, eagerly awaiting something new to arrive. You're not really getting anyone in, but especially with the timing of The Walking Dead and Fortnite and all of those, like, those were relevant. Those were a way to bring people in. And that's something that, like, I just, I'll touch on at some point, I'm sure. I just wish they'd be better about, man. Yeah.
All right. What do you got? What's your...
So, my first one that I would improve or change is the competitive scene.
Okay.
So before I start, I want to recognize that they have done some really good things compared to where they were. We have a more clear type of Pro Tour circuit than we did. Mm-hmm. Not Grand Prix are back, and they're not Grand Prix. They're still being run by Star City, but Star City's running their own thing as well. Now, I want to acknowledge that good. Huey's doing a great job. Now's where I'm going to get into some improvements. What the fuck are you doing leaving LATAM off? What is wrong? Yeah. Like, that is absolutely absurd to me. This is a global game where you have multiple Hall of Famers from the LATAM region who go to all of your Pro Tours, and you don't cater to them or have an event for them. And I understand it probably had something to do with the bid. Channel got the bid before because they were the only ones willing to foot all of the expenses for international events. So that's why they ran them all. Star City probably didn't want to foot the expenses, so they didn't get it. Fine. That means LATAM doesn't get one, and that's a huge miss to me. That is one of the most important regions for vendors, because it's where we can get rid of like damaged and HP cards, which is nice. And it's one of the most important just for the health of the game, and ignoring that I think was really bad. The other thing I think was really bad is the complete lack of transparency. Not just with, what's going on in the competitive scene, but what they're even thinking or considering. And again, I understand there's a lot of people there who definitely know what they're doing. I would just like a little more transparency from them as far as what their process is. How are they making these decisions? Are they looking at data from past events, how they want to run large-scale events, how they want their seasons to work? Just give us something and say, hey, we haven't made an announcement yet, but we have this. Wizards, you love to announce announcements. It's your favorite thing besides announcements, is announcing them. Just in some way, or maybe even Huey on Twitter once in a while, hey guys, here's what we're working on with competitive Magic. We want to bring more events, better support. These are structures we're looking at. Try to involve the community in the process some. Because your competitive community is only as good as your involvement with it. Like, if you don't incentivize them to exist, they won't. And one of the best ways to do that is to engage with them, involve them. Try to say, hey, you know what? This is what we're thinking of. Can we get some feedback? Because we don't want to make something that is absolutely dogshit terrible when everyone is already concerned about the professional competitive scene of the game and alienate them with those choices. So to me, that aspect of their management of the competitive scene has been sorely lacking, because they have brought in people internally that were involved at the highest levels of the game. But I feel like in a lot of ways, they're ignoring the middle ground, your grinders that occasionally spike a GP, that could spike a Pro Tour, but you never heard from them again. Those guys, those invisibles, so to speak, of the competitive scene, not including them is, I think, a huge problem.
Yeah, it's weird that they've been pretty quiet on this overall, but at the same time, they weren't really noisy either when Grand Prix were going on, because Grand Prix were just kind of successful. They would just tell us, like, hey, we hear the complaint that there aren't enough invites going out for Pro Tours because Grand Prix are getting so big. Yeah. But that took a while, but they never said that they were working on it or what the plans were, or if there were plans, until they just released an update. Yep. And only getting information, it seems like, twice a year is also
and some of that's just vague nonsense.
Yeah, especially because it seems like the second time we get information in a given year is after the event in Vegas, when they're like, we made a lot of mistakes, so we're going to try and fix them real quick.
Right.
Yeah, and so it does feel a bit ham-fisted in the way things are going. So, yeah, it would be nice to get more transparency, more, especially for the additional regions like we talked about when they made the standard announcements. That there's nothing for LATAM. There's very light support for Europe and APAC overall. Yeah. And a lot of that comes down to, well, we'll just wait and see to determine what we're going to do based on turnout to the events.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not the best way to do it. Like, you have store data, you know how many people are playing. People are just going to walk away. They're just going to attrition. They're not going to fly to, like, the one event that they're going to get because it's so far, or train it if they can. Like, it's just...
And, that's the other one is, what about Australia? Yeah. Sydney was actually one of, well, and obviously they don't do this for the vendors. Sydney was one of my favorite venues to go to for events. That was just incredible. It was gorgeous. It was a great time. And, back in the day, quote, when I was out grinding, it was, hey, I get to do this and see a bunch of pretty cool stuff while I'm doing it. That was a huge draw. Mm. And I think that's something that is also missing. But,
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, and I assume a lot like that in particular will come about once we really figure out what's going on. If they, I don't think we're going to end up with a worldwide TO, but once things settle down in that regard, maybe it'll pick up. But I know that is kind of counterintuitive to what I just said before, but that's also speaking from a place of privilege coming from North America, where we have all the events yet again. Like, I feel for people in other regions, I really do. It's extremely difficult, and continuing to put like all the Pro Tours in mainland North America is also not fun or easy. So there's just a lot that is left on the table.
Yeah. Right. What you got next?
All right. My next topic is discussing the desire to ensure long-term growth over short-term profits with the Universes Beyond sets that we're going to be getting. So we have Final Fantasy and Spider-Man based standard sets, as well as a SpongeBob Secret Lair in 2025.
Yeah.
I do think these choices to bring in new eyes to the game are fantastic, provided they do the fucking marketing. But my concern is sacrificing long-term growth for short-term profits by not engaging these customers buying these cards for an IP in a way that would convert them into long-term players. We do know people who connected with Transformers and the Godzillaverse cards did engage with the inserts, and similarly, people who enjoyed Lord of the Rings and Doctor Who were able to engage with those products, but there was no hook from Hasbro or WotC to really keep a lot of these possible new players engaged with the game. They just came and went. They got their singles, and that was it. For the game to survive and thrive, one-time customers need to be converted into long-time customers, and I think the fact that we will now be seeing half of all sets in a year be Universes Beyond speaks to the fact that this conversion isn't happening or isn't happening at a rate that is desirable. So they're just going to be using, effectively, Universes Beyond to pump sales because IP.
Yep.
They don't care. It seems like they don't care about growing the player base realistically anymore.
Yeah.
So I would like to see a plan from Hasbro, from WotC, to turn one-time customers into long-time customers and hopefully players. Putting arena codes in packs doesn't convert. The Pokemon Company knows this. And their IP is one of the most engaged with on the planet. Yeah. So this all rolls up to the marketing effort. Will they be buying ad space on Nickelodeon during primetime blocks? I hope so. Will there be cross-promotion of Magic into the Final Fantasy MMO? I hope so. Will Magic show up in Marvel content like it did in the 90s? I sure hope so. Yeah. But this is all something that I would like to see happen to ensure long-term growth and health of the game instead of just short-term profiteering, effectively.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really strange to me because they have obviously said, Secret Lairs, we're doing this to broaden our IP. Mm-hmm. We want to bring in new people. We want to attract people to the game and give people a way to enjoy it that's personalized. Okay, that's fine. But you literally choose to spend more money on IPs that are clearly, from my perspective, not bringing people in, that I don't understand quite what your goal is here. We have some tangentially related or nerd adjacent things like the Street Fighter one. Okay, that was cool. Mm-hmm. Marvel, I personally think is stupid, but whatever. That's a fine IP. But you continually cite that your sales are good because of Lord of the Rings. Okay, well, do you have player numbers you can give us? Can you show us anything that says this is actually bringing more people in that are long-term tenants of Hotel Magic the Gathering? Or is it people that are just like, hey, Doctor Who or something? Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, that is bad for the game. It is a game first. And if you are wasting resources on IPs that don't retain customers, that don't bring new customers in, that's resources, assets, whatever, that you need to allocate to improving your game instead of watering it down and making it fatigued, honestly. Mm-hmm. The fatigue at this point from IPs is just as real as wallet fatigue. And sure, I'm sure Final Fantasy is going to sell insanely well.
Yep.
Is any one of those people going to actually play the game, though? I know two people who I worked with at a card store who did not play Magic and will be getting the Secret Lair, but will never open it and never touch a card. That is not a good thing. And that is an IP that should be insane.
Yeah. I think there's also an amount of this idea that transcends from my previous idea, which is just when they are putting the pre-skinned product into standard, seems like a hope that you're going to convert those players. Yep. But instead, they could be making a standard set and then reskinning the entire set as secret layers.
Yep.
Bundle things together. The Final Fantasy one is very easy. You bundle it by the game. Final Fantasies 1 through Infinite. That one's not difficult. It's right in front of you.
Yep.
Then you have the Spider-Man stuff. And you can also bundle that thing together as well if you would like to. But if they're not going to put forth the effort to convert players from people who are coming in to buy, well, like, who is this product for when it is ordered from distro to an LGS?
Yep. None of our customers.
Commander players are going to buy the decks they like they always do, and that's a difficult target to hit, to figure out what motivates a Commander player.
Yeah.
But when you look at somebody who wants to engage with the IP, do you honestly think that the product being ordered from distro to the LGS that needs to be opened for a chance at the card that they want is how they're going to engage with it? Or are they going to wait until that card is on TCG Player or on a vendor website and then buy it?
There's the one.
Yeah, exactly. So this isn't quite cart in front of the horse or forest for the trees. It's just this scenario of their own making where by pre-skinning the standard sets, they're attempting to force something that might not work the way they want it to, and could have been better off if they did it like I suggested, which is just you build the standard set and then you reskin it for the secret layer and let people engage with it that way. Yeah. Because they know a lot of constructed players don't crack packs. They're going to get their singles from the secondary market. But if they're interested in Final Fantasy and the cards are good, they'll buy the secret layer from you, and you own the secondary market at that point. Yeah. And I don't think this one's that difficult to figure out. And
the other thing that's really strange, and this, well, no, I'll touch on it in my next point, actually.
Yep, go for it.
Okay, I was going to say, so my next point is actually kind of piggybacking on yours, and it is the LGS. And it is specifically things like ignoring long-term profits for the case of short-term gains. And one of the biggest ones, I've harped on this a million times, was how short-sighted are you that you are now selling your product direct to consumer and sealed. That has not been great. The communication for that was not great. I would love it if there was. You know what? The Secret Layer program is now an LGS WPN certified product. Mm-hmm. You can place your order through your LGS, or your LGS can just order it and sell it in store, whatever. Great. That is awesome. Something that would be nice is you could order it on the Secret Lair site and say which LGS it goes to. People may not remember there actually was a program set up during the pandemic where you could play F&M on Arena and give money to your LGS.
Yeah.
They clearly can do this because they've taken over and over and over more and more and more away from us and given us less and less and less. And some of that comes with what I was saying in my last point, a complete lack of transparency on things. There's, the Facebook group for WPN stores, and I understand the people on there are not, full-time representatives, and they only have what they're told. They can't speak on anything else, but man, they give the most company line possible. It's the most non-answer you've ever seen. And then when they drop something on us like, oh, we're bringing MSRP back, and people are like, this does nothing, the response is, well, it's going to do this, this, and this. It'll fix everything. People will charge more. It's like, okay, again, you didn't say if you were still competing with us or not. And that lack of communication and lack of foresight on the understanding that, if people can only go to TCG Player for singles, where are they playing? And that's, I understand they want to push more to Arena. Great, it's lower overhead, whatever. But it makes it really hard for the LGS. If I could see the level of communication for pricing, product releases, planned programs, stuff for premium, with the same amount of transparency that I could see what I am paying to a distributor, Man, that would be great. I would just love them to give me an idea of, hey, we hear your feedback. This is generally what we're going to try to address. And I'll come back with an answer. Even if it's bad, even if it's not the answer you want, even if it is the exact opposite, I will at least give an answer to you. And that has almost completely evaporated over the last year and a half, 2 years, where there is any sort of meaningful, transparent communication with the LGS or any seemingly fair plan for a long term for the LGS. And I would love to just see that brought back into things. I would love Hasbro to say, hey, you know what? We messed up. We understand years ago when we were hands off. When we first acquired WotC in, what was it, like 2004-ish, 2007? Somewhere in there. It was not like this because Wizards of the Coast effectively had its own thing going on. And then a former Hasbro CEO gets brought in as Wizards of the Coast CEO, and that's when things start to change. And I would just love to see it go back to how it was when it was better. Man, am I an old man screaming at a cloud?
I don't know. It's kind of weird because if you were not to engage with WotC and you wanted to have an LGS and you focused on like anything that just wasn't Magic, it would be difficult if your primary vertical wasn't infinite Pokemon, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
If you wanted to be an LGS focused more on the tabletop side of things, you could kind of get by with, like, WizKids is defunct now, right? So it'd just be Games Workshop and some other odds and ends for TTRPGs. Like, you can engage with WotC for the books, but you've always been fighting Amazon for that regard.
Yeah.
But you don't have to worry about premium and all that other bullshit. It's just like the moment you want to engage with TCGs and you don't want Pokemon to be your largest vertical, you have to deal with some of the dumbest stuff. Like, Konami has some asinine rules, and they're not all just for the good of the game and good of vending, but at the end of the day, they are clearly asinine, but unshifting and unwavering. They don't keep moving the goalposts like WotC does. They just make you do some weird shit.
Yeah.
And like, I would almost rather have to deal with that than deal with trying to, if I don't have WPN Premium, attain WPN Premium, and if I do have WPN Premium, worry about shifting goalposts to keep WN Premium or secret shopping, unless they come in on a day when there's cardboard visible in the store and I got a knock for that. Like, the level of pedantry that can go into it.
My God, I hate it.
Yeah. The distro stuff is difficult as well, but I do understand that distro also has their own problems with everybody else too. So they're not just like hucking somebody else's issues onto you. It's just, everybody's shit stinks when it comes to distro, it seems like. So that one's just a tough nut to crack. Otherwise, it would be. I don't think that makes you an old man. I just think it makes it pretty clear that WotC is almost purposefully making things difficult for an ecosystem that they're still almost entirely reliant on.
Yeah, and that's the thing that really boggles my mind about it is there's no way you don't know how important the LGS is, but you are choosing to ignore that fact. That's so bizarre to me. But...
It also is. It's almost like they don't understand the core values between their two core IPs.
Yeah.
So if you take all of Dungeons and Dragons away from the LGS and you put it on Amazon, the LGS loses out a bit because people would expect to find those books there.
Yeah.
But if an LGS wanted to, they could stock from Amazon, and WotC could have their own shop of D&D books and paraphernalia through Amazon.
Yeah.
And it would be fine. The LGS isn't core to Dungeons and Dragons.
No.
It might have been in the years prior to the internet where you were trying to put playgroups together with DMs. But in the internet age, you can just do all that little bit of social networking online. I'm sure you could even find DMs on like Craigslist. That site still exists, right?
Yeah.
And it's difficult to imagine an LGS that whose bread and butter is Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
So if we move that product line to Amazon, it doesn't really hurt the LGS or WotC. But if you move Magic to Amazon and you pull everything from the LGS, well, then why are the players even engaging with the LGS? What's the incentive?
Right.
Oh, you go there to play tournaments. Well, why would we even know about tournaments? Because you got to go to the LGS to find out. Well, why are we going to the LGS? To play tournaments. And you just have this
Yep.
this 2-node bit of circular logic.
Yeah.
And removing players from the LGS ecosystem by telling them that they can buy product on Amazon or elsewhere does irreparable damage to the tournament scene as well. And that's the part of the ecosystem that I don't think WotC seems to quite, or maybe Hasbro doesn't seem to quite grok.
Yeah. And I think it is current WotC because of Hasbro's influence, because it seemed like it started to be a thing after Hasbro's influence grew greater. And I don't know if that's because they're so used to big box stores.
Yeah.
Because that's obviously Hasbro's bread and butter when it comes to toys.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously. And they just don't understand that small box is as important. So they're trying to emphasize the big box more. But I don't know. It is baffling to see continually happen.
Absolutely. And so, like I said, that's the only thing that makes sense to me, is that one division doesn't quite understand the ecosystem and the economics of the other when you are attempting to maintain a professional circuit.
Yep.
So, I don't like I said again. I don't think that makes you an old man yelling at clouds. I think there's just a lot that you want to harken back to, get back to, because that meant the ecosystem was working as intended.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I think that's going to be it for part 1, right?
Yep, that's it.
All right. So for at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, YouTube, and Blue Sky, I am at Halt. I am Reptar. You are
at Damon_Thurston.
And we'll see you next week.